Japan has not flown its next fighter yet, and China is already treating it like a battlefield threat. It is a sixth-generation stealth fighter, projected to cost $48 billion. A jet designed to command drone swarms, absorb and process battlefield data at a scale no fighter today can match, and challenge China's growing control of the skies over the Pacific. This is not an upgrade, this is not a refit, and it is not an American hand-me-down. Japan is designing this aircraft from the ground up. It is built to survive inside the most contested airspace on Earth, built to fight through dense missile zones, electronic attacks, and sensor networks designed to hunt stealth aircraft. Beijing sees what is coming, and it is worried enough to formally object to Japan exporting the technology before the jet has even flown. That reaction tells you everything. Right now, Japan's air self-defense force is badly outmatched on paper. China fields roughly 6 times more combat aircraft. Around the Senkaku Islands and the Taiwan Strait, Chinese fighters push closer every day. These flights are not routine patrols. They are pressure tests, designed to probe response times and expose limits. Then the pressure crossed a line. In December 2025, a Chinese J-15 fighter launched from the Liaoning aircraft carrier allegedly locked its fire control radar onto Japanese F-15 jets near Okinawa. Japan's defense minister called the act extremely dangerous. This was not symbolic. A radar lock is a simulated weapons engagement in contested airspace. Japan got the message. Its frontline fighters tell the same story. The F-15J fleet is aging. The F-2, Japan's main multi-role fighter, entered service in the early 2000s. It remains capable, but it was not built for the kind of war China is preparing to fight. High-density missile environments, relentless electronic warfare, swarms of networked sensors tracking targets from every angle. Japan knows it cannot win that fight by extending old platforms. So the question becomes unavoidable. Can Japan build a fighter advanced enough to deter China, credible enough to shift the balance of power in the Western Pacific, and fast enough to matter before 2035? Japan is not attempting this alone. In the year 2020, Tokyo joined the United Kingdom and Italy in the Global Combat Air Program, known as GCAP. This is not a buyer and seller arrangement. It is a shared effort where all 3 nations hold design authority, divide work equally, and retain intellectual property. Under this partnership, before anyone else, systems works alongside Mitsubishi Heavy Industries on airframe design. Engine development is shared between Rolls-Royce, Avio Aero, and IHI Corporation. This is not just a fighter program. It is Japan signaling that air dominance is no longer optional and that the next fight in the Pacific will be decided by who sees first, strikes first, and survives inside the storm. The goal? Deliver a 6th-generation fighter by 2035 that replaces the F-2 in Japan, the Eurofighter Typhoon in the UK and Italy, and becomes the backbone of Indo-Pacific and European air superiority for the next 40 years. But here is where it gets interesting. China is not standing still. Satellite imagery from mid-2025 revealed multiple tailless 6th-generation prototypes at testing facilities near Beijing, including the J-36 and potentially the J-50. China's 2-seat J-20S stealth fighter, likely designed to control loyal wingman drones, has reportedly entered operational service. The race is not theoretical, it is happening right now. What makes a fighter 6th generation? It is not just speed or stealth, it is the ability to process, fuse, and weaponize information faster than the enemy can react. GCAP is being designed around a next-generation radar system that Leonardo, one of the program's lead sensor contractors, says will generate over 10,000 times more data than current fighter radars. That is not a typo. 10,000 times. This multifunction radio frequency system does not just scan for targets, it simultaneously conducts electronic warfare, disrupts enemy communications, spoofs incoming missiles, and maps the electromagnetic battlefield in real time. Unlike traditional fighters that rely on external support assets like AWACS or satellites for targeting, GCAP is designed to independently form a kill chain deep inside hostile territory. That means the aircraft can detect a threat, identify it, prioritize it, assign a weapon, and execute the strike, all without waiting for permission or data from rear area command posts. In a war where communication links are jammed or severed, that autonomy is survival. The aircraft's onboard mission system treats data as the primary weapon. British defense officials describe GCAP as a system of systems, where the fighter does not just carry missiles, it commands an entire network of sensors, drones, and allied platforms. The cockpit becomes a command center. The pilot becomes a battlefield orchestrator. And here is the kicker. Japan insisted on design authority that lets it upgrade sensors, mission software, and electronic warfare capabilities without waiting on UK or Italian approval. That is a level of technological sovereignty Japan has not had since the 1980s. GCAP's most disruptive feature is not what it carries inside, it is what it controls outside. The fighter is being engineered to command loyal wingman combat drones in real time, extending its reach, multiplying its firepower, and absorbing risk in the opening hours of a high-end conflict. These are not remote-controlled toys. They are semi-autonomous aircraft that can conduct combat air patrols, intercept threats, carry additional weapons, or fly into heavily defended zones, where sending a manned fighter would be suicidal. British officials confirmed in April 2025 that GCAP will carry roughly double the weapons payload of an F-35A, suggesting a capacity well over 8 tons of ordnance. That is enough to carry long-range air-to-air missiles, precision-guided bombs, anti-ship missiles, and electronic attack pods simultaneously. But the real force multiplier comes from the drones. Imagine this scenario. A single GCAP fighter enters contested airspace over the East China Sea. It is accompanied by 4 loyal wingman drones. The drones spread out, creating a sensor net 200 miles wide. One detects an enemy fighter trying to close in. The GCAP pilot reviews the threat, assigns a drone to intercept, and clears it to engage, all from 100 miles away. The enemy never sees the manned fighter. They are fighting a phantom formation. The U.S. is pursuing a similar concept with its collaborative combat aircraft program, aiming for over 1,000 drones paired with F-22s, F-35s, and next-generation fighters by the early 2030s. Australia successfully test-fired air-to-air weapons from its MQ-28 Ghostbat loyal wingman drone in late 2025, proving the concept works in real-world conditions. Japan, through GCAP, is positioning itself to field this technology at scale by 2035. This is where China made a critical strategic miscalculation. Beijing assumed loyal wingman technology would remain a Western advantage for at least another decade. Then, satellite imagery showed China's own tailless drones and the operational deployment of the J-20S two-seat fighter, explicitly designed for drone control. The arms race just accelerated. GCAP adopts a wide-clipped delta wing configuration, big triangular wings optimized for sustained high-speed flight, long range, and heavy payloads. This is not a dogfighting design. It is a deep strike, sensor-dominant platform built to dominate airspace at range before the enemy even knows it is there. Maximum speed, Mach 2.5, over 1,900 miles per hour, fast enough to outrun most surface-to-air missiles once detected. Service ceiling, 65,000 feet, is higher than most radar systems are optimized to track. Dual engines rated at 150 kilonewtons of thrust each, enough power to supercruise at high altitude without afterburners, conserving fuel and reducing thermal signature. The propulsion system is the pacing technology. Rolls-Royce, Avio Aero, and IHI announced in September 2025 that they are shifting to a fully integrated consortium model to accelerate engine development. Japan's fiscal 2026 budget allocates over 160 billion yen, roughly $1 billion, specifically for continued engine and airframe design work. Japanese officials are targeting a first flight around 2030, with a technology demonstrator scheduled for 2027. Here is the part that kept planners up at night. Japan loosened its defense export restrictions, specifically to allow GCAP sales to approved partners like Australia and potentially India. This move improves production volume, drives down per-unit costs, and creates a regional coalition of operators flying the same advanced platform. Beijing formally protested, calling it a destabilizing escalation. That tells you how seriously China takes this threat. China's response has been swift and multi-layered. After Japan's prime minister suggested military involvement if China attacks Taiwan, Beijing reinstated seafood import bans, encouraged millions of tourists to avoid Japan, and ramped up carrier operations near Japanese waters. The December 2025 radar lock incident was not random harassment, it was a calculated signal. A 2025 study by Chinese military researchers at the National University of Defense Technology identified Japan's existing F-35A fleet as a greater threat than the older F-22 due to its advanced avionics and multi-role capabilities in South China Sea and Taiwan Strait scenarios. The study recommended that China develop both electronic warfare countermeasures and kinetic weapons to neutralize this advantage. Now imagine that threat assessment applied to a fighter with double the payload, 10,000 times the sensor data, and command authority over autonomous drone swarms. Japan's GCAP program forces China into a strategic dilemma. Beijing can either pour resources into matching sixth-generation capabilities, diverting funds from naval expansion and missile programs, or accept air superiority erosion in the Western Pacific. Either choice has costs. For the United States, GCAP represents a critical force multiplier. Japan hosts the largest concentration of forward-deployed U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific. A credible, interoperable sixth-generation fighter operated by Japan amplifies deterrence without requiring additional American aircraft. The UK and Italy gain access to a cutting-edge platform while sharing development costs. It is a rare strategic win across 3 continents, but there is one problem nobody is talking about enough. Can Japan, the UK, and Italy hold this partnership together under schedule pressure? European commentary has already raised concerns about technology transfer and work-share balance. If any partner pulls out or demands renegotiation, the entire timeline collapses. Can Japan build a fighter jet advanced enough to deter China and credible enough to shift the balance of power in the Western Pacific before 2035? Yes. The GCAP program has the budget, the technology partnerships, and the strategic urgency to succeed. Japan has committed $48 billion, secured trilateral work-share agreements, and maintained a 2035 operational timeline, even as China accelerates its own sixth-generation programs. Here is what you need to remember. First, this is not just about replacing old jets. GCAP represents a fundamental shift in how air superiority works. From individual platforms to networked systems where one pilot commands multiple aircraft and dominates battle space through information dominance, not just firepower. Traditional air combat centered on one pilot, one aircraft, one engagement. The best trained pilot with the best sensors and weapons won the fight. GCAP changes that equation completely. A single GCAP fighter can control 4 or more loyal wingman drones, extending sensor coverage across hundreds of miles, multiplying weapons capacity, and overwhelming enemy defenses through distributed lethality. The pilot becomes a battlefield commander, orchestrating a coordinated strike package from the cockpit. The drones absorb risk, penetrate defenses, and execute missions that would be suicidal for manned aircraft. That is not an incremental improvement. That is a paradigm shift in what air power means. And it makes every previous generation fighter, including China's J-20 and Russia's Su-57, functionally obsolete in high-end conflict. Second, China is reacting in real time. The radar lock incident in December 2025, the accelerated sixth-generation prototypes captured in satellite imagery, the operational deployment of the J-20's two-seat stealth fighter, all of these are direct responses to the GCAP threat. Beijing sees this coming and is scrambling to close the gap Before 2035, China is also accelerating political and economic pressure. After Japan's prime minister suggested military involvement if China attacks Taiwan, Beijing reinstated seafood import bans, launched tourism boycotts, and increased carrier operations near Japanese waters. These are not random policy decisions. They are calculated moves designed to impose economic costs on Japan for pursuing GCAP and to test whether Tokyo's political leadership will sustain a $48 billion fighter program under sustained pressure. Third, Japan just reclaimed technological sovereignty in military aerospace for the first time in 50 years. Tokyo controls its own upgrade path, its own mission software, and its own export decisions. That changes the entire regional power dynamic. The question now is not whether GCAP will succeed. It is whether the 2035 timeline holds, or whether China's sixth-generation fighters reach operational capability first. Whoever fields these systems at scale first gains a decade-long advantage in the most contested airspace on the planet. Air superiority is not a luxury in modern warfare. It is the foundation that enables everything else. Without control of the skies, navies cannot operate safely, ground forces cannot maneuver without constant air attack, and missile defenses become overwhelmed by coordinated strikes from multiple vectors. The nation that dominates airspace in the Western Pacific controls access to Taiwan, dictates terms around the Senkaku Islands, and determines whether international shipping lanes through the South China Sea remain open or become exclusion zones. And what happens next will determine whether the Indo-Pacific remains contested, a region where multiple powers balance each other and no single nation dominates, or becomes dominated by whoever wins the sixth-generation race. The race is on. The engineering teams are working, the budgets are allocated, and Japan just put $48 billion on the table to win it. If you found this breakdown gripping, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps this channel soaring.